Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Talk. Well, one really thing I like to do, I think I've said this before, is I like to read messages that people put on their profile page. So this one says, I have a job I love. Putting a roof over someone's head is meaningful. Everyone deserves a chance. This is from today's guest, Jason-Wodlinger. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, you're a mortgage agent, right?
Yes.
So when did you decide to get into that line of work?
About a year ago, I decided that, I was working in the corporate world for a really long time and kind of missed working directly with people. And I also wanted to do something that I thought was really meaningful. And so about last year was when I decided to get into the mortgage agent business.
So what kind of training does that involve?
Yeah, so you go to school and there's coursework you have to do, and then there's a lot of studying because there's an exam that needs to be written. And so you go to school and you pass you do all the school requirements. You write the exam, and then once you write the exam, then you have to sort of join a brokerage for about 2 years before you can sort of move up the ranks.
Oh, okay. So you're not self-employed.
You are self-employed. It's kind of like it's almost like an articling student at a law firm. You're self-employed. You work for yourself, but you have the benefit of having, your insurance and your administration and your payroll kind of stuff all happens through the brokerage, but
Mm.
you run your own business.
So what, in today's market, like homes are so expensive, apartments, whatever you're buying. Um, how is it working for you with your clients specifically?
Yeah, you mean it's also a very confusing time as well, right? Because interest rates are high, we don't know when they're going to go down, and so it's kind of thrown the traditional model of like, you get a house, you get a low rate. Like people were getting mortgage rates at 1%, now they're up and above 5% now. So it's a very different world. And a lot of people have decided not to jump into the housing market because of that. What's interesting though is that you have to sort of think about right now, although prices may seem high, they're actually quite low simply because a lot of people aren't bidding on houses right now because of mortgage rates. But as soon as mortgage rates start to fall, or even if there's a talk of mortgage rates falling, housing prices are going to skyrocket. And what I'm telling, folks is that, you may not want to get in right now because mortgage rates are high, but once mortgage rates fall, it'll be a bidding war. So you kind of want to figure out the best time to jump in.
Yeah, right. And it's so iffy, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Mhm.
And you put an offer on a place, like when I sold my home, it sold within a week. Uh,
Yep.
but there's other places that haven't sold at all after a year.
Yeah.
So is it
Absolutely.
would you say it's a buyer's market or a seller's market?
Right now, I think it's a buyer's market because there's lots of supply out there, and there's not a lot of buyers again because they're very price conscious and very interest rate conscious. Now, keep in mind there are a number of people who are renewing mortgages, and some of those use a mortgage agent as well for that. They don't have a choice; they have to renew.
Right.
So, in those situations, those folks are just looking for the best option. And what are the options that are out there? I guess is the question that they ask me.
Yeah. Now you're based in London, Ontario, right?
I'm actually in Toronto, but I work all over Ontario, and because of the relationships we have all over Canada, I can actually work all over Canada as well.
Oh, okay. So now do you get say people from another country coming in to buy something looking for a mortgage?
Certainly, it does. There are a lot of people what we call foreign ownership, but the government, the Canadian government, is really cracking down on the restrictions related to that. The concern being, if foreign investment comes in and buys property, it may not help us out in terms of the housing situation that we have, right? The lack of housing for people who need housing. So there's a lot of restrictions on a lot of foreign investment right now.
I'm glad to hear that actually.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, look, there's a lot of people out there who just need to put a roof over that. There's an interesting legislation that came out, or an idea that I think the people are trying to get support for, which is forcing home builders to create houses that have a separate unit in them. So if I want to buy a house, I can buy a house and it already has a self-contained separate unit, which I can then rent out. It'll help me afford the house. It'll help somebody else who's looking to rent. And so there's this talk now, really, again, ideas on how we can really help the housing supply problem.
Right. So do you think government forcing builders to include a rental unit in a house, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I know it's a good thing for when people are looking for housing, but is that a good thing for the builder?
Well, in the end, if the builder wants the right to use particular land, if they want the right to continue on with their business license, if they want grants and subsidies from the government, then they have to help out as well. They have to. If you're going to make money, you got to do it in such a way that it gives back to society. That's my philosophy.
Okay, all right. Now, I come from originally from a very small town in New Brunswick, northern New Brunswick, very small population, and I think even like 5 years ago, if I wanted to move back, I could get a house at a really good price. But now, people from Vancouver, people from Toronto, Ontario area are moving to back east because of the lower cost of housing. Is that what you're experiencing?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of interprovincial movement, definitely. People moving from as far away as East Coast to West Coast, traveling to different urban centers. So Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, the major centers in the East as well. So there's a lot of movement among urban metropolitan cities. For sure. And you're right, as people look at the differential between the cost of living in Toronto versus PEI,
Yeah.
right? You can buy 2 or 3 houses for the amount that your house in Toronto is going to go for, especially in this remote work environment as well, right? You've got workers now that can work anywhere in Canada or potentially the world. And that's allowing people to be a little bit more nimble in terms of where they establish themselves.
But doesn't that increase the cost of housing in those areas that were once lower?
It's a great point. Yeah. I mean, certainly as you start to see more and more people, nature abhors a vacuum, right? So if you've got depressed housing prices in one area of Canada and high housing prices in another, all these people here will go to the lower priced housing, but then that builds up the pricing and then we're back in the same situation again. So I guess for some folks, they want to try to find those opportunities where there's lower pricing. But to your point, after a while, it all just sort of just evens out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's pretend I'm a brand new home buyer, never had one before. I go to you and I say, okay, I want to buy a home, and I need a mortgage. Like, do I pre-qualify, or like, how does that work?
Yeah. So if you're going out to buy a house, you really want to be competitive with all the other buyers that are out there. And one of the ways you can do that is to have a pre-approval, which basically is a document that says the bank believes you can get a mortgage for this much money, and you can show that to the seller to show them that you're a serious buyer, you've got the cash ready to go, you've got your deposit ready to go, and that really shows them you're organized and you're serious about buying the property. And that can really help you a lot. And you can come to a mortgage agent and they can get you a pre-approval in 24 to 48 hours.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
really, and also you kind of want to know as a buyer, how much money are you working with? What actually can you get a loan for? And once you know that, now you know what you can go out and look for.
Right. Now, do you ever have a client that comes to you and you have to tell them that this is not going to work out for you? You just don't have enough finances coming in, or
That's a really great question. You may think that the purpose of my job is to help people get houses. It's actually not. The purpose of my job is to make sure people are making decisions about property that are best for their financial situation. I have number of clients who come to me and they think they have the finances in place and they're so close, but it's not quite what they need. And I'm blunt with people and say you need about 6 more months to save up a bit more money, because the thing about home ownership is that there are unexpected surprises. Your roof collapses, your foundation cracks, things can happen to a house that require hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you don't have at least some kind of savings that you could tap into, hopefully that never happens to you, but should an emergency happen, you need access to the funds to fix it. And so I will look at an entire client's financial health and make the decisions for them, or should I help them make the decisions for themselves in terms of what's financially responsible.
right? Okay. Now, okay, so you wouldn't be involved with anybody who has the cash. I want to buy your place and I have the cash, so you don't have to worry about them, right?
Right, exactly. Those are probably few and far between, but I'm sure they're out there.
Sometimes when I'm watching these shows where in the a lot of it is in the US, where people are buying homes, whatever, and their mortgages seem to be like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Is that happening here too?
Do you mean where the amount of debt that they owe is very high compared to how much money they make?
No, the mortgage payments. Their
Yeah.
payments are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously a mortgage payment is based on the size of the mortgage, right? And the kind of deal you structured. But cash flow is a really important thing. One of what you're bringing up is like the ability to pay your debts every month. And you've got income coming in from your job, you've
Mm.
got debts, so the money's going out, and hopefully there's savings left over. And a good mortgage agent will actually do all that analysis for you. They'll say, this is what your payments are going to be, not just for your mortgage, but for your property tax, your heating, your insurance, your electricity. These are all things that are required to run a house. And and so you look at all of that and say, can you afford the monthly payments for all of these costs associated with the house, given how much income you have coming in as well? And if that ratio of debt to how much money is coming in is really high, what that means is a large portion of your income is just going to debt, and
Right.
you don't have any savings left over.
Mm.
So it's a really good question. And I am, obviously people are going from they're going from $1,000 mortgage payments to $4,000 mortgage payments because interest rates are so high.
Yeah.
And some of them are forced to sell their houses. Some are trying to renegotiate. I work with a lot of people who do debt consolidation, who take all their credit card debt and lines of credit and bring it into one loan product. So there's a lot of that going on right now. Yeah.
Right. No, what was it called? Is it something called like an open mortgage where you're not locked
Yep.
in?
So yeah, there's open mortgages, there's closed mortgages. You want the ability to get out of your mortgage if suddenly, for example, right now, if interest rates fall next year, which most likely they will, and you're getting into a mortgage today, well, you're going to have like 2 to 4 more years of a mortgage while you're watching rates are falling. And so you want the ability to get out of your mortgage if possible and get into a better one. And so again, a mortgage agent can tell you what your penalty costs would be and if it makes sense.
Are most of the clients come to you, two income families?
Not always. No, there's a lot of single parent families that come to me as well. I also work with people who share property. I like multi-generational families that want to come and buy like a 9-room house and want to all live together. So there's a lot of that as well. But and there's also, don't forget, there's also things like guarantors, which is people who can vouch for your income, but they don't own your property. They're just there to assure the bank that you can pay your mortgage payments.
Oh, okay, right. Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Do you have any advice for first-time buyers or first-time people
Yeah.
needing a mortgage?
Absolutely. I would say my advice would be find out how much money you're working with. It's never too early to speak to a professional about how much money you need to buy a house, because even if you don't have enough money, it's good to know how much you need, right? If you need this much money in income to afford a house you want, now you know. And you can do the calculations online, all that kind of stuff, but sometimes it's good to talk to a professional who knows the nuances of how it all works. Never too early. And I think if you want to own property, you should get out there and ask the questions and educate yourself and talk to a professional, because we love talking to people. You don't have to necessarily want to buy a house tomorrow, maybe in a year or two's time. But now that you've met your mortgage agent, now you've got a plan in place.
Right. Now, is it best to have a large down payment or just basically what you need as a down payment?
So again, just going back to what I said about, financially responsible and being financially healthy, as much of a down payment is always best, because in the end, we don't want you to be in debt. I mean, you need leverage to buy a house, you need a mortgage, but if you've got as much cash as possible that you can put into your down payment, you're going to pay off your debt much faster. That's always my suggestion. Now, if you need some of that cash to do a renovation, so you're buying a house and you're renovating it, then you want to hold back some of that cash for your renovation. But if you don't want to do that, I would say as high a down payment as possible. Also, you'll get better terms from the bank if you have a higher down payment.
Right. Okay. All right. So, okay. So do you now, and you don't deal with any of the banks, right?
I work with all banks, all lenders, all credit unions, private lenders as well.
Okay. But you would, if somebody came to you and said, like, which bank should I go to? Are you able to do that, or is that
So
something?
so the first question I would ask them is, what are you trying to achieve? What's your situation? And based on that, I can make recommendations on which bank has the best solution, because not all banks have the same products. Not all banks have the same mortgage rates, right? Some of them are a little more collaborative when it comes to working with somebody who has non-traditional inconsistent income. They work with people, and others don't work with them at all. So there's different banks are a good match for different people's situations.
Okay, I don't think I've ever known that,
Yeah,
that.
they're not all this. Banks are not all the same. Also, some banks are just faster than other banks, so they work faster. They make the process much easier, less stressful for the borrower. So it's my job to know which banks work that way.
Okay, so is there anything you can tell me that you're not allowed to do that would be considered like, uh, I don't know what's the word is. I can't think of the word at the moment,
Like
but
unethical or
yeah, that's it.
yeah. So not disclosing something to the bank would be something that we would never recommend, right? You should be very transparent about everything. One, because to be honest with you, it's hard to hide things from the banks because a lot of your finances are on record with various agencies and whatnot in terms of the credit bureau and whatnot. But also, it's good to just go into these situations with fully transparent. It shows all the banks, that you are open and willing to work with them. So I would always say, one thing I would not do is not disclose things. The other thing is that is really critical is the value of the house you're buying or selling needs to be accurate. There's a lot of nefarious activity out there of people who inflate the size of their house because they want to get as much money as possible for a loan against it, or the seller will inflate the size of the house. So the appraisal that's done is a critical element of buying a house because the appraiser will give a very, very objective view of what the value of the house and the property is.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point because one of the things, like I own a condo, and what wasn't disclosed was the leaky windows. Um, and
Yeah,
I found out
exactly.
after the fact that that one of the person whose place I bought was on council and didn't want that reported, you
Yeah,
know? So something
yeah.
like that should never,
You got to
that,
be so careful with that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. I have a thought in my head now, I can't remember what I was gonna ask you. Uh, Okay, so what was the question? Darn it. Sorry, my brain does that. It's called
No
brain
problem.
freeze or having a senior moment. I have
No,
those
no, it happens
all
all the
day.
time. I know.
I think, but we probably covered everything though. But I just want to talk. I covered your job as a mortgage agent. But in the past, you were an financial investment.
Yeah, so I basically in the past I've taught people how to trade options in the stock market. So
Oh,
options are a very high risk trading asset, and it's complicated and complex. But there's a lot of people out there who want to know how to do it. So I sort of counsel and guide people on how to do that as well.
what kind of training did that involve?
Yeah, so I'm not a licensed financial advisor or planner, so I can't tell people what to invest in, and I can't tell them what sector or any of that nature. But what I can do is teach them the skills they need to make those decisions for themselves, which in the end I think is probably a more beneficial value to bring to people is how do you make the decisions for what's a risky asset and what's not?
Yeah, yeah, because I'm always like, go safe,
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
enough.
You need to be able to sleep at night with the decisions you're making, whether it's buying a house or buying stocks or options. If you can't sleep at night because you're worried about what the investment is you've just done, that's a warning sign.
Right. Well, yeah, sounds good. So maybe we'll end it there. Um, but maybe you'll come back in the future with some tips for first-time buyers or people wanting a mortgage, whatever it is. Yeah. In the meantime, if people want to get a hold of you, now I know you're on Facebook, but do you have a? Oh yeah, wait a minute. Do you have a website? Yes, you do.
If
Just
you just Google Jason Wadlinger Mortgages, you'll see me pop up.
okay. That sounds great. So just stay on
Yeah.
council. Stay on camera. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. I'm having a really bad time this morning. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching the show. I hope you continue to do so. Take care, everyone, and peace out. Oh my God.